Reading textbooks or attend a comprehensive course are still the fastest way to learn any new field when two things happen. One, the author is an expert in the field, and two, they have synthesized all the basics in a way that a beginner can understand. But then, when you decide to read a textbook and take notes of it, this is what usually happens. Pages and pages full of highlights. Because everything we learn seems equally important. Since we are brand new to that area, we find it really hard to judge what is important or relevant in that textbook. So at the end, we are left with two choices on how to read that source. And the first one, you can decide to hang onto every word. Try to understand everything step by step from beginning to end, okay? And that's what will be covered in this video. And the second one, we quickly read the source just to get an overall perspective of the domain. And that's what we'll cover in a future video, which I'll leave the link somewhere here in the screen. So first of all, there is nothing wrong with hanging onto each word of the source. Some people prefer to go slowly making sense of everything. That's one way of learning, and some people prefer this way. The problem really appears on how we take notes while deep reading. And the process usually goes like that. First, we read a paragraph. Then that information seems foundational to us. I feel like I should know that, okay? And then what we do? We highlight, maybe copy, paste on our notes, and then we say, okay, this is very important. I think it's foundational because it's a textbook after all. It should be foundational. And then we move to, okay, let me move to the next paragraph. And then we do the same thing again, and again, and again. And when you look back, the whole text is all full of highlights, and our notes are actually basically just a copy paste of the source. But if that's the case, what's the point of taking notes? Can I not just read the source again? And it gets even worse. 2 months later, all that information feels so basic that seems irrelevant. So we feel like our notes have basically no value because it's just a copy paste of very basic information that we may not care as much as at the time we were reading. And our notes are so long that we may decide to never read them again. So how do we solve that? First, we need to accept 3 things. 1, at the time of reading, we don't know what's important yet. 2, at the time of reading, we don't know what is relevant yet. And 3, everything may seem interesting because everything is new information. So when taking notes, rather than highlight and just copy pasting that information into your notes, I invite you to have a conversation with your source. You can write it down by, and then you copy the quote, the author means, and then you express your understanding. What you understand from what you just read. Or, I don't think I understand what the author means by, and then you put the quotes there. Do they mean this or do they mean that? And yes, you may still feel compelled to take notes of everything. So here is what you can take notes on and when to stop taking notes, okay? So you take notes of everything that is interesting, so you are really enthusiastic about learning about it. When something is relevant, and yeah, everything may seem relevant, so make sure that you take notes of something that is really relevant. And you can do that by explaining, why is this relevant right now? Relevant for what? And if you can't answer those 2 questions, then it's not relevant. Not yet anyway, okay? And then the third one is something puzzling, which means it's something that you don't understand, but you really want to. Or perhaps it's something that conflicts with your current understanding. And that's what makes a puzzle worth solving. So if it's something that you don't understand, but you don't actually care, just let go. You can always revisit that source later if you need. Now, suppose that you are taking notes only of what is interesting, relevant, or puzzling to you. But you somehow manage to find everything interesting, okay? You're a very enthusiastic person. Or that you manage to make everything relevant. Should you still take notes of the entire source? That's when I like to use the boredom test. So here's the boredom test. If you feel bored mid-writing and start mentally complaining about the note you're writing, then maybe it should not be a note. So it's not that interesting to make you spend time thinking more about it. That's why it becomes boring. It's not relevant enough to feel that it's worth your time. And the puzzle is not exciting enough to make you want to solve it. So if your current notes, the notes you're currently writing, doesn't pass the boredom test, then let it go. You can always return to the source if you really need to. By having a conversation with the source and taking notes of what matters to you, the process of reading and making sense of the source becomes much more enjoyable, as it's focused on what you care about and that will end up showing up in your notes. Also, you are much more likely to remember what you read, because rather than participating on a passive reading where you're just listening, okay, and say, you are actually actively participating in the conversation. You're talking with your source. So you're much more likely to remember that conversation. So I hope it was useful. Wait a minute, Bianca. Won't my notes still be huge? Yes, they might be. But that won't be a problem if you take these huge notes and you break them down into idea notes. But that's the topic for another day. If you want to learn more how to organize your notes as idea notes, let me know in the comments and I'll make another video for you. Until then, see you in the next video.